Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Stacy Buchanan, and I am the producer for the GBH Music Series Front Row Boston. And we put together what's poised to be an exciting and interesting and informative discussion tonight about the return of live music. I don't know about you guys, but it's hard to believe that we are officially one full year in since the pandemic shut the world down. And I guess while things seem to be looking up, we're in the middle of a countrywide vaccination that's producing promising results. And we're also in yet another phased rollout plan here in Massachusetts. It's progressing day by day. Um, it still feels like the return of live music and live shows in general just remains one big collective shrug at this point. I mean, there's certainly no shortage of speculation around the topic or a longing for it to return. And several people in the industry have been furloughed or lost their jobs altogether over the past year and are left in the dark wondering if they'll ever return. And musicians, many of whom make their money through live shows, are aching to get back on stage. And as for us audience, music fans, I think we're all just a little bit eager to get live music back in our lives again. But even as we do start to consider the return or some sense of live show normalcy, there are so many new things that also must be considered at this point, including how the economic significance of a live performance has changed and how to manage a lingering crowd avoidance as the vaccination rollout moves forward. But I think it's the long way of saying that it's all just a reminder that not only has the absence of live shows affected much of our personal livelihood, over the past year, but it's also changed many aspects of the industry forever. So I guess that's got us all asking, what will live music look like when it does return? I think that we're all here tonight because each of us is emotionally and professionally invested in the return of live music, and I'd actually like to start the conversation there. So JJ, let's start with you. You've got deep roots in the music industry. So can you tell us a bit about your background and how it led to you opening ONCE?
Wow, sure. I started taking pictures of rock bands in 1985. From there, I've managed bands, I've owned labels, I've booked tours, I've been in bands, I've done a lot of different musical stuff. And when I stumbled across a big empty hall, I accidentally turned it into a rock club. Basically, just it's sort of what I know how to do is work in music.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Catherine, BAMSfest. The mission is rooted in artist discovery and specifically from largely unrecognized corners of the city. And that's important. And, you've been providing like a literal platform for these musicians to perform each year. So how did live music play a role in motivating you to get the nonprofit off the ground?
I did my first talent show at 13, and I've been hooked ever since. And because an adult believed in my dream to do a talent show, I just love the fact of my peers doing creative things that I just couldn't do. And I felt like it was such a responsibility, even at the age of 13, to continue to support my creative friends and their creative friends as best as I could as a fan first. And so I would put all my resources and creativity and strategic planning together to figure out how to maximize the greatest number of opportunities for different audiences that have access to local artists across different disciplines. And not just see them just in music, but also visual art and dance, all these different things that really help shape our own lives as we define our identity and personality and how we want to be respected. So that's how I got into it. That's how live music has been a part of my life. And my mom made some amazing cassette tapes during my time as a kid. And so I am just a fan of what music can do and its power and just all of its glory, and want to continue to support it as a fan first.
Do you still have those cassette tapes?
I surely do. Yes, I do. And I do play them, yeah, on occasion.
Mhm.
And my mother also has a reel to reel, so I also play that too. So, and it still works.
What
So
a
yeah.
treasure. um, Jared, your entire career is centered around booking stages around Boston with live music. So why don't you tell us how you got there?
Yeah, so I've always been, a fan of music. I played in a band in high school. I played in the orchestra and concert band in high school. And as I went to college, I went to school up in University of New Hampshire. I kind of stopped playing as a musician, but I went to a show at the Whittemore Center there. It was my freshman year, and I kind of sat back in upper bowl of the arena, and I had this weird epiphany where I just noticed everyone having such a good time, and I knew that there was a student organization that did it, and I said that's what I want to do. I want to make everyone else have an amazing time, because I have a great time going to shows, and I know the feeling, and to be able to put something on to that everyone can unite and have a good time together. It's something I've always been. It's always driven me. So shortly after college, I was at the Casino Ballroom in Hampton Beach, and then ended up at the Bowery Presents when we came into Boston around 2010. So yeah, it's been an exciting time, and although my history is relatively short in Boston, 8-9 years or so, it's I guess 10 years or so, it's I've loved every minute of it, and it's been great to be a small part of what's an amazing music scene here in town.
Yeah. Only in Boston would 10 years be like not a lot of time. So Jared, I have to ask you though, I mean, has making live music your career changed your feelings about it?
What was that? Sorry.
Has making live music like part of your career, has it changed your feelings about it? Or are you still as passionate about it as you were when you first started?
I'm definitely still as passionate as I was when I first started going to shows. I will say that I was very fortunate to be working in the field and get to go out to see a couple different shows a week. And up until the pandemic hit, I was out going to shows 3 to 4 nights a week at least. And this time, the past year, we've had a lot of time for reflection and how much I can't wait to go back and go to every single possible show that's gonna go that I possibly can go to. So it's in a way reignited that passion, but it's always been there for sure.
Yeah. No show will be left on the floor at this point.
No.
No show. So Jessica, I mean, it's also your job to, identify emerging talent and help them nurture their promising careers in the industry. So was it a love for live music that inspired you to become an artist manager?
Oh yeah, like after college, well, during college, I was like always like I guess a music nerd. I always tried to find like new artists all the time. So I think after college, I kind of wanted to do something that was in music, but I didn't know what that looked like. So I joined this radio show, which we interviewed local artists in Boston, and got to really meet a lot of them and give them insight on stuff. And that's actually where I met Latrell. I thought that he was interesting, to say the least. And I thought he was really talented. And so we got talking, and people used to always be like, well, you should manage. And I thought it was always good at doing project management stuff because I like starting something and finishing it. So I decided to give it a try. No music background, didn't go to school for music, but I loved it so much. So I just kind of really wanted to learn the business side of it.
And how long have you been doing it now?
I've been doing it for a little over 4 years now.
Nice, great
Yeah.
job. And you've been working
Thanks.
with Latrell for 4 years?
Yes, it's like working with 8 people, so I'm all set.
I love Latrell. Like I said, he's one of my favorite. So this is a general question for the entire group, but I mean, I think we've all established like how live music has gotten us to where we are today. But what do you think it is about live music that just makes it so great? Like, why are we aching to get it back on an emotional level? What is it?
I can dive in. I mean, I think we're a social species. We enjoy interacting with each other, and I think music is something that brings us all together. Being we can all have similar tastes or different tastes and listen to music, but we're all listening to something. And I guess for me, and I think for a lot of people, live music, being in the same room and feeling the sound coming from the stage, and seeing it all and just sharing the same experience together is something that's kind of unmatched.
Right.
I miss the vibrations of it.
Yeah.
I miss the feeling of it, the actual feeling where you move because you have to move because that's what's going on right then is, and it just, you feel it all the way through you. And I think that's really nurturing as well. And it's really important to do that with other people that have to move at that moment. And I think that's, it's hard to not have that, like, not dance. It's hard to not dance. You love to dance.
It's so interesting that you say that, because we just wrapped up, well, a couple months ago, we kind of just filmed Latrell doing like a live set for his vinyl release. And, everyone in that room just kind of stopped and we just watched the band. And it was only like about 6 of us, but we were just so like flabbergasted at like, this is live music. We haven't heard this in so long. And like, it just brings like an emotional sense, because we haven't heard live instrumentation, we haven't felt bass, we haven't felt drums, like, and even though it's good for your soul, like it also impacts your body, like you feel something when you're in the presence of live music, and it's really important. And I think when that's not there anymore, like there's something missing, from you, like there's a part of you that's not there anymore.
It's like a livelihood that's just gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I was going to say, I think there's something inherently beautiful about strangers entering into a room and having a unique experience that can't really be defined. It's this beautiful, unspoken, nonverbal communication. It's like someone strings a chord, you're like, or someone sings a certain lyric or a melody. It's just like you all are, whatever drama you are having in your life, when you walk through the door and the show begins, you are almost your true self in that moment amongst strangers. And you can be that without damn near any judgment, because you're going through this experience together. And then you walk back out the door and put back on whatever you had. But this level of escapism with live music is like unmatched. It's even sometimes hard to articulate, because it is momentous. You had to be there to experience that moment with those people.
There's also being with people that that you see regularly at shows, but you don't see them if you don't see them at shows, because they're friends. Like, you think of them as friends and they're your community and they're your neighbors, in ways, but you may not even really know their names. You just know their faces because you see them at shows. And it's hard to lose that many people all at once if you're a show goer, if you're one of those people that likes, even if you don't know them, even if you stand quietly, you'll see those faces. And I really miss that. I miss those people that I don't know how to reach them, but I think of them.
Yeah, that's very true. It's like it's a family. I mean, working in live music, watching live music, it always comes with a significant amount of reward, but I think that there's also a significant amount of risk too. Did any of you ever imagine that the risk would be where it is today?
I was always afraid of like a walk-in breaking down, oh no, we're going to have a $20,000 expense that we didn't see coming.
Not a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead,
just before the pandemic came, I was like, this is a pretty awesome career, and everyone's gonna always want to see live music, so I'm never gonna have to worry about not having a career. And that worry sank in on March of last year.
I don't know if people realize too that we had a really mild winter and live music was doing great, and we were all about to go into this amazing spring, and like everybody had great bookings and Boston was on fire. It was like, right? It was like we were all going into this amazing spring and summer.
Yeah.
So it was even more like,
wow. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that we had like a whole like rollout and show plans for May. Yeah, May. And I think I was in denial for the first couple of months. I was like, oh yeah, we're still gonna have the show. We spent money on trying to create content around the show. We had like a whole plan defined down, release date, everything. And I was like, in 2 months it's gonna be gone. Like it's not that serious, but we are still here.
Yes, we are. So actually, I want to go back to a year ago. I mean, it is actually a year ago to the date. Well, it was yesterday, technically, that Governor Charlie Baker declared a state of emergency, blah, 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 emergency that just shut down. It shut down the whole city. It shut down all the live music shows, all the venues. JJ, I want to start with you, but would you mind walking us through what happened with ONCE when the announcement was made? And like, how long did you think it would originally last?
Our last show was 1 year ago today. It was the murder capital. We knew something was bad. We knew things were bad. We had put a lot of plans in place. We bought what we could. I mean, you'll remember you already couldn't get sanitizer. We were like, using Everclear basically to sanitize. Actually, we had kitchen sanitizers. We were spraying down the handles. We were putting people on rotations to wash their hands. So I don't know. I remember thinking we have to find a way to put some money in the pockets of the bartenders. That was like the first thing that went through my head was, oh, whoa, they just got all their shows canceled. Like we got to make sure that they can pay their rent. But I didn't think we were looking at, an eternity. Shows started to cancel. We started to get calls 1 year ago, probably today or yesterday. The Murder Capital show, it was their first show. They had just flown in from Ireland. They got one show. I'm sure that happened all over because Boston is a first show spot. So I'm sure that everybody's show that night was the first show of some poor band. But I don't know. I remember just being like, okay, we got to find a way to raise funds for the crew because I didn't think it was all going to keep going. And, it was just like, we got to protect everyone. I don't know. It was, it's still surreal, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's still surreal. It's been like walking through some kind of weird, like dystopia.
So what has it been like, navigating through the state and federal funding system set up for small venues and trying to get the financial support that you need to help these people and to, try to keep the doors open?
Yeah, so I'm the representative of NEVA, the National Independent Venue Association, and I do a lot of advocacy through a group called Save MA Stages. And NEVA was the organization that brought the Save Our Stages Act to the table 10 months ago, right away. And I remember a lot of people being like, oh yeah, right, there's gonna be money for venues, like no way. And all I can say is venue people, we're tenacious. We don't just give up. We're not gonna be like, oh yeah, there's a lot of other people that need help too. No, we all need help, right? And the venues got together and, Jared said this earlier that people are talking to each other who never talk to each other, and it's fantastic and it's gonna keep going and it's great. My goal is to reach small venues to help them to understand how to access a very complicated grant called the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, which is what we now call SVOG, which is what was called the Save Our Stages Act. It got sort of combined with other stuff. It is a lot of money. It is available to venues that fall into certain categories, and it's incredibly complicated to access, harder than the PPP, the payroll protection money, because it's a government grant. And so it's like applying to build a bomber. It's like just layers and layers of bureaucracy and nobody really knows what's going on. And it's also being developed way too quickly. So it's been, I never thought I would understand these things. This is not what, I'm a photographer, entrepreneur, chef, like talking to people about anything to do with the government is like really you know, I was a Clash fan, you know, like I was that political, but I still am, right? But,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, I love Crass, but I was never like the political one, except for like, you know, smash the patriarchy every day. So it's kind of cool to be like, okay, here's what you have to do. You're going to log into login.gov and you're going to set up your account. And then you're going to log into, you know, you're going to get your DUNS number and you're going to bring it over to sam.gov. And then once you get your cage number, you can take those things and you can sign up for grants.gov. And then that's the portal, hopefully, that you're going to be putting all this information into. And like, I know that. How do I know that? So that's the kind of advocacy, you know, that I've been doing to try to work with venues.
Right.
It's exciting. It's a good
exciting
thing.
and important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening. It is happening, you know, and it's happening for restaurants too.
Yeah.
You know, the money is going through. Finally, it's going to where the employees are. That's where people are.
So can I ask you where ONCE stands today?
Yeah, the physical space is closed permanently. That was a real heartbreak that we had to let go of our physical space. We are looking for a new space actively and excitedly. We have every intention of coming back, and we're going to be doing some outdoor summer programming this summer and looking for ways to stay vital. And right now we're a virtual venue. So we're doing a ton of virtual programming as ONCE. It's the ONCE virtual venue. And we've been doing a lot of stuff. It launched May 1st. So we've been doing shows throughout this virtually. And that's, it's a thing of its own. It's a, you know, we're making art, right? That's what we all want to be doing here and feeling music. So that's where ONCE is at now and in the future. Thanks for asking.
I love your optimism, and I have no doubt that you'll find a new location. But I do have to ask too, like, do you foresee a similar future for other small independent venues around Boston?
Um, there's not a lot left
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons. And I think that there will be venues, and the people that know how to operate venues will operate venues. We're entertainment specialists, we're hospitality of a very special kind. And I believe that the community is very strong and will continue to be a strong community regardless of the name over the door. I am grieving for the loss of many, many rooms and hopeful for some really creative futures. You know, I'm sitting here with people who I know are doing creative things, you know, all the time, and we're going to keep doing that. But I really do grieve for a lot of loss. And it's going to be, yeah, Jared.
You know, I know JJ feels this immensely, but they're more than just venues. They're more than just rooms with stages and sounds. They're communities. These are places where people gather. They're places where, you know, local artists have a place to start, have a place to hang out, have a place that they might not feel welcome elsewhere. You know, it's a place for gathering, and these you know, the small independent ones they're important to the fabric of any town's, you know, music scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that actually is a great segue into a question I have from the audience, which is, speaking to Boston being on fire just before the pandemic, do you think we've lost momentum as a music town, or will we gain momentum because concert goers will be so eager and excited to get back out there?
We will gain. We will gain. I'm gonna tell you why. Boston is it's a family-oriented town. Like, there is a need for us to build off of each other so we can get through our daily stuff. I think because there has been a year of solitary, I should say, because that's what it's felt like. Um, people are eager to be outdoors, or eager to be indoors, or eager to reconnect to all the points we made earlier about being a family. And I think despite the pandemic, it has shown us the value of human interaction and human connection. that if we didn't value it before, we sure do value it now. We actually see what happens when arts and culture and music is removed from a community, what that does to people. And I'm hoping even through the work that JJ's doing, and all artists, I think, is that we are a stronger force more now than ever. I think more what they took for granted about in terms of live music. And it's my hope that, you know, all audiences really value and appreciate and truly support all aspects of putting together a live music show.
Right.
Front of house, back of house, not just the artists themselves, but all the people that make your experience worthwhile to come out. I think we just never looked at it that way, but I think altogether the pandemic has really shown us, you know, it's not just a music show. You have bartenders have families, you have restaurants that, you know, that feature these folks, but all these people make that experience memorable. So, you know, paying more attention to not just the artist on the stage, but your talent booker, your AV person, your audio engineer, they all make it worth their while. So no, there's no momentum loss. I think we might be taxed with trying to figure out how to spread it out over time.
It's not a
Yeah,
terrible thing either. Go ahead, Jessica.
I was just going to add, yeah, I totally agree with Catherine. And on top of that, we are a college town as well. So every year we introduce new music lovers, sorry, but lovers every year that love music, love going out to the venues that we do have, unfortunately, but yeah, that are looking for new ways to be entertained by what we have to offer. So I think that we're going to probably have a huge demand once we start opening up. I mean, it's all about if we can fulfill that demand and make sure that we're creating better experiences for the communities that we do have.
Right. I've got another question from the audience. This is for Jared. Jared, do you anticipate it being difficult to book top nationally touring acts when people in Boston might be less willing to attend live shows compared to other parts of the country?
That's a great question. You know, I think everyone's priority here is safety, and you know, we're going to come back when it's safe to come back. So, you know, that's first and foremost our priority, and that's for fans, that's for our staff, and for artists. So, you know, we're going to wait till make sure it's safe to come back. And you know, folks may have different comfortability levels, just as they are, and as we all go through this and navigate this crazy time, because you know, everyone's just taking different to it. But you know, our goal is to come back when it's safe to do so. And you know, I don't anticipate booking the bands to be any more or less difficult. And you know, we hope our goal is to provide an environment that's safe, that people feel safe coming to, just as we kind of always have done, and that's the goal.
That's really great to hear. Jessica, how quickly did you see the ripple effect of all the canceled shows and stuff from a year ago with the artists you work with? How quickly did it hit you guys, and how long did you think it would last?
Well, I think initially it was kind of just hot and cold. So we were obviously talking to the booking agent, and he would keep us posted, obviously, like, you know, there's some cancels, but me being me, I'm always a pessimist. So I was always on the site to look up how many people were canceling their shows, who was canceling their shows. Could I see why they were canceling their shows? Like what, you know, what was the main reason? Like, was it for the pandemic, or were they worried? Like, what was the general reason? And then I think on the site, once I started seeing people canceling left and right, I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. We're gonna have to cancel this. And I think that's when it started initially kind of snowballing into a more everyone's canceling. And we had like a bunch of college shows lined up. I think we had 4. We had a festival out in Ohio in June, and then it just started, you started getting the emails like, we can't do this, you know, we apologize. And it just started to happen, I think, a lot more quickly after April. And probably the end of May is when everyone was like, well, we're not doing any kind of shows moving forward. So it happened pretty fast after, I think, April.
Speaking of the snowballing, Jared, you were in the middle of that, of all the canceled shows. What did your world look like a year ago?
we had a lot of shows on the books. You know, it all came on pretty quick. You know,
Mhm.
there was early in
Yeah.
the month, there was some rumblings of you know, a virus going around, and
Right.
that week it came on quick. You know, we adopted sanitary measures fast and followed, you know, government guidelines, and then, you know, um, the pandemic was declared a pandemic, and, you know, everything moved really fast. You know, we had a lot of shows to reschedule, to move. Everyone had a different, nobody knew, no one had any idea how long it would be, what the severity of it is. Haven't had a pandemic in 100 years or so, so it was new for all of us. um, so, you know, some folks want to just, you know, well, they were at the end of their tours, maybe we just cancel the tour and we'll call it a day. And, you know, others were just the beginning of their tour, so they pushed it up a couple months, and no one knew then that it was going to be more than a couple months. You know, we didn't
Yeah.
know. And obviously, looking back now, it's a different perspective on it, but
Yeah.
nobody really knew. You know, it was a new experience for all of us. So, you know, each artist has kind of handled it, you know, differently. And, like I said, some postponed, some rescheduled. But, you know, the ones that we have rescheduled, folks are hanging on to their tickets, so they're excited to be back. But yeah, we just didn't know.
Yeah. Do we still not? Do we still know? um, Catherine. So I'm sure that a year ago now you were just knee deep in BAMSfest planning, and then after the announcement, did you think you would be canceling the festival altogether, or were you considering to plan maybe push it out a later date?
We actually looked to all of our festival contenders
Mhm.
to really like understand it. Well, if they're canceling, then that we already know where we needed to be with our decision. Um, I never thought in millions that I would have to cancel a festival. Delay, you know, for rain or whatever, yes, but not cancel, especially going into what would have been a uh, pivotal moment for our festival because we were literally trying to scale third year.
Right.
And there was all this momentum, all these resources, all these people that were just like, yes, that is going to put us on the map for 2020 as a small arts and culture organization. So to make the decision to cancel was hard. It was hard on our staff. Like we had deep discussions about that because everyone put in so much sweat equity to make it happen, and to not have it was very hard. But we had to pivot very quickly. So we just started doing digital programming, which wasn't in our wheelhouse, but we knew that if we didn't deliver on something to be consistent, we would lose the face of the people. And so we figured out how to remain in the eyes and hearts of our fans.
So you're going full digital now.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and we're trying to relive certain moments of our first 2 years to remind people that we will get through this, over this, under this, and we will look forward to being out in the field with grass between our feet and sipping lemonade and watching live music at
Right.
Franklin Park. You know, like I think there's we've experienced a year of trauma collectively as a human race, and that's why I don't think the momentum for music is going to dwindle. I think there is such a desire to be reminded that we will get through this and just
Mhm.
imagine what that future could look like.
Right. Yet there's still so much that we need to consider before we can get there. And I'm sure like me, you guys are all consuming everything that speaks to, when live music is going to come back right now. And I feel like there are so many probable scenarios and theories floating around, and some are rooted in science and safety, some are rooted in, wishful thinking, and some are rooted in solely in business and financial gain. So I think, oh, and then on top of that, there's our own state's plans, which are, reopening venues as soon as I think it's next week or the week after. Um, but I think that regardless of the theory or scenario that plays out, or the audience's collective eagerness to just see live music again, like Jared said, what's the forefront of most of our minds is safety at this point. So I guess this is a question for everybody, but do you, any of you feel like there are, like it's safe enough to open venues right now? Yeah, not. Is this the
It's a
big
loaded
collective
question.
shrug? I know.
A loaded shrug is a great answer.
Yeah,
I think it's still too soon to really determine.
I like loaded shrug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
like a
great to
valid
see,
answer.
it's great to see the vaccines rolling out. That's
Yeah.
a step in the right direction. We're definitely going in the right direction as opposed to 6 to 8 months ago, where it was just a giant question mark. Now we have these vaccines and they're going out, and we're starting to understand how this virus works. But yeah, a collective shrug.
There are places in the country. I mean, Florida never closed,
Right.
there, Austin, like there's places that have been stayed open longer, been open more, and I think the numbers are pretty clear. I think that this is not the time to be monkeying around with trying to push. I mean, why now? We've been closed for a year. Come on. Like, hold on. Don't put people in this position right now where, I mean, this is all financial, and it puts people in a really difficult position if they can be open. It's very different from, like they shouldn't have to make that decision. This is hard enough in so many ways, and it shouldn't put their staff in that position. I think it's premature.
In some ways, it feels like the people making the decision don't even understand the industry. Not in some ways, in most ways, in all the ways. And they don't understand how the industry works. And yeah.
I think
Jared,
it might.
oh,
was gonna
sorry, go
say,
ahead.
I think some of these decisions are really coming from a consumer standpoint and not from the people who make the industry run,
Mhm.
who put their lives, on the line every single day to serve others. And
Right.
I think that's where, some of these decisions are being made. Is just like, well, if the people or the constituents of a certain region or state, are advocating, like that's great, but I feel like just like with healthcare, uh, those who operate back of house, we are also essential workers. Like we put our lives at risk every day to do this work just so that people can to have a good time.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was a real general consideration about those folks, um, who really make it work for all of us, to do this safely and soundly, and so that, um, the experiences can be done in a way that makes sense for all of us, not just the show itself.
Right.
When the governor said that everybody could open up, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming. And I'm talking about, like, I listen. I'm listening all the time. Nobody knew that was coming. Even if it was safe to do it, and you have 18-foot ceilings with full ventilation, and people are sitting 12 feet apart and 25 feet to the stage, and everybody's masked, like with all of those guidelines. I don't think anybody, I mean, some places would be like, woo, let's go, let's open right now, but nobody's ready to open. And I'm sure Jared could speak to the fact that many shows, like, we were booked a year out, and the shows that we were doing had been booked for months. And for any venue to be like, oh yeah, you can open now, like, well, what? Like, we're not ready to open. Nobody's ready to just open. It would be too expensive.
Yeah. I think I actually have a question here in relation to that. Okay, so this question, the porch in Medford is open. I just bought ticket to see the Silks on April 3rd. Pretty sure there is a large plastic barrier in front of the band, and half the people I'm going with are starting their vaccine or have already got shot too. What are your guys' thoughts on this, on that scenario? Does that sound safe? Do you feel that?
Is it outside?
I'd assume it's outside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, plastic barriers have been shown to be,
Yeah, I
the
really don't know.
impact in the state even said plexiglass doesn't count. But I mean, if they're following all the guidelines and it's outside
Mhm.
and they're ready to go,
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's take this back a second. So Jared, are artists rebooking? Are you guys rebooking right now?
We are, yes, we have some shows that we're booking later on. It's there's nothing that's going on right now. I mean, we're a long ways from, I think, where the guidelines in the state will allow us to resume shows
Mhm.
at a capacity that is feasible to operate a music
Mhm.
venue
Yeah.
at scale. So we're constantly in talks with artists and their agents about what so when we are ready, we'll have something ready to go.
Mhm.
But most of the pandemic has been a big shuffle. Like I
Yeah.
said, when we first closed down in March, we pushed shows a couple months, some a month or two, because we just didn't know. We thought that's what it would be, and a lot of this has just been shuffle it again,
Mhm.
shuffle it again, and we'll see. So we're doing a lot of shuffling around, and when the time's right, the idea is to have something ready to go when the time is right.
And Jessica, I assume that your concern for your artist safety when returning to the stage has been heightened a little bit. I mean, how are you planning to keep them safe when working through the details of like planning, upcoming tours and performances?
Well, right now we're still playing it by ear. For the most part, everything has still been virtual, so that's been pretty okay. But especially, you got to keep in mind, like we're people of color, we're the most affected by the pandemic. So
Mhm.
we also have family members that have preconceived conditions and all that other stuff. So Charles' mom had cancer, and his dad has a heart condition. So there's not just us that we have to take into consideration, as they've been trying to stress to many of us for the last year.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, just in general, had just been waiting for a proof of concept to see what it looks like. If it's awkward, like, is it worth kind of just risking your life to do it? Like, is it uncomfortable for everyone involved? Like, do fans actually enjoy being masked and not really themselves? Because, they're still, you're still not enjoying the whole live experience. You're just enjoying, I guess, like being in the space
Yeah.
with other people. So I think it's just still up in the air, kind of playing it by ear to see, what people are doing. Like there's still bookings coming in from colleges now slowly, but it's virtual. So
Right.
yeah.
So let's shift a little bit, or let's shift to the virtual area for a second. I actually have a question I want to bring up right now. So this year we've seen a bunch of new ways for artists to connect with their fans virtually with live streams and of all kinds. Um, how do you anticipate artists integrating these new virtual touch points into their tours going forward? Um, specifically for Jessica, will your artists keep a live stream option at times?
Yeah, I think that they're pretty cool. They're unique. You
Mhm.
get to create the world that you want people to see
Mhm.
without like much input. If you want to book a space and just put together like a pre-recording, you can do that.
Mhm.
I mean, I think in general, this whole like pandemic just pushed people to be more better content creators
Yeah.
and figure out how to connect to their audience more. And I think even though a lot of us who are either in the music space or manage or artists themselves, like, I think a lot of us were a little disconnected with the fan bases. And then when we kind of stopped and rethought our strategy, like we're like, well, we really need them and we really need to keep engagement up. So what can we do in this space to kind of move forward? So we have to kind of think about them a little bit more than kind of just worrying about selling them stuff. Like we have to think about connection, experience, just all these factors that a lot of us didn't really take into consideration that much.
Yeah.
I mean, so I do think that they're going to be a part of like packages, whether that's if you pay more to have like a secret show with an artist or
Mhm.
to that extent, but I think they will be incorporated moving forward.
Catherine, can you talk about some of the biggest positives to taking BAMSfest into the virtual space?
It's definitely allowed us, as we say on our team, to go from local to global. Again, we're only 3 years in with our festival, but to Jessica's point, content alone allows us to reshape the narrative of Boston's music scene with the audiences that we have in ways we've never imagined. And it's allowed us to challenge artists to think about how they want to tell their story now differently, which is almost like a very uncomfortable place to be in. But to Jessica's point, you have to think differently about connecting with audiences, and we will forever be changed by COVID in terms of how we do that, because of the distance, because of the lack of social engagement and connection, people are desiring to know you first before you get to the artistry. And that's pure human, understanding and relationship building 101. So artists really have to think about what is the narrative that they want to tell with the music that they love the most. People will resonate more with that, and then decide how they want to engage with your art, whether it's virtual or in person. But it's really about the storytelling. So for us, we're very excited to expand and represent Boston globally, with this festival moving forward, and give artists the chance to tell their story to many more people, that may have never looked at Boston before, but now they can.
So what I'm hearing is that a hybrid model of live shows and of virtual events, I mean, it's reach. You're reaching bigger audiences. You're also making music more accessible. I mean, there are people who, for whatever reason, whether it's accessibility or just like just incapable of going to a live show, they can now experience these performances from the comfort of their own homes. So it's just expansion at this point, which I think is a great thing. But how how do you think that the jobs that you guys are doing today would be impacted if virtual performances became a permanent part of the live music experience?
I actually think it's a good thing. It actually, if you have a venue with a capacity of 450, that's how many tickets you can sell. But if you can then sell more, also some access to something virtual, it increases the band's ability in a smaller venue. It increases bands like local bands. It gives them more reach, and it gives them an opportunity to sell tickets virtually, which I think actually has great potential for helping bands who have fans all over the place, to have more access.
I think also before the pandemic, there were certain genres where streaming shows was a normal thing.
Right.
Specifically I think mostly in the jam band genre. Bands like Fish, people would just pay to hear it, even if they're across the country. So I think you'll see that expand into more genres, which is great because it's a way for the artists to be more in touch with their fans and give them more of an experience regardless of where they are. Someone might be in a remote area of northern Maine, and the closest that artist on tour is going to come to them might be Portland, Maine, or Boston. So that gives that person an opportunity to come see their favorite artist on tour, but only
Right.
from their couch.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, I've had conversations with a few artists about the benefits of marketing and distributing and connecting with fans digitally. And one of the biggest things that I've heard is that it's been giving them the opportunity to bypass traditional like gatekeepers and to connect to broader audiences. Um, and I love hearing that, but I think that despite these benefits, I'm curious to know if virtual performances can actually lead to a solid revenue stream for artists. Does anyone see that happening?
I think for me, I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I think from what we've noticed is it's all going to depend on how much work the artist wants to put into this. That's why we exist. Like that's partly what we do so they can continue to go to create. But all the other things, that's why we're here to ensure the opportunities or multiple opportunities are there. And I think, if an artist is truly interested in learning all of those things and can manage that successfully, go for it. But I really am not seeing that, quite honestly. I think we will all still be needed regardless because of what we can do and do on our feet and adapt to very quickly. even in a virtual space. You know, a lot of these devices, a lot of these platforms, I would imagine a lot of artists didn't know that that even existed, let alone try to figure out how to do them.
Right.
And unless you have the time to learn and perfect it, you're gonna need us. And it's nothing to be rude about, but literally, that's why we're needed in this industry.
I totally agree. There's people who don't want to play to a camera.
Yeah.
You know, they want to get up on that festival stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question from the audience. What about music presenter booking professionals like yourself? How are you surviving? And have some of your peers chosen different directions or jobs because of the pandemic? And do you
Well,
feel there are enough music professionals enduring in the field to sustain the scene in Boston?
jeez. Well, I think that I think JJ hit this earlier, but you know how she adapted and learned something new, like whether that's writing grants. I think all of us learned how to hustle, and for us, like you know, Latrell fell into licensing, and he had another Cheerios commercial up. He did the Row commercial and had a Christmas commercial and had a regular commercial for that rowing sports. But yeah, so we fell into licensing, and it was actually really lucrative, and it was a huge demand during the pandemic because people were trying to revamp commercials and get new things out. Everyone wanted to wear a mask in commercials and needed jingles and all that other stuff. So you know, that was an avenue. People consistently kind of kept that going. And you know, there's other services like Artlist, Epidemic Sound, excuse me, and other music licensing services that people can use for independent artists, because people always need music for YouTube. So you know, why not have them use your music and get paid for it? And those people look for music all the time. So I think we would have never kind of explored that route if we didn't, I guess, have the pandemic and try to find another source of income. So, I mean, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. It's just, do you want to go down that tunnel even though it's dark?
Right. That makes sense.
I think one of the other things that has happened, that we've noticed that we've been working really, really hard to do with artists is that, yes, you may not be able to perform live, but you're a content provider. So we work very hard to get artists to be on panels to talk about their work, because oftentimes they weren't talking about their work at all. And again, it's all about storytelling, right? So however you can, you know, angle it, it allows for greater visibility with new and existing audiences. So we worked extremely hard to prepare artists to just talk about themselves. And it became very lucrative for them as well, because they're like, wow, people are going to pay just to hear my story. Yes, you're a creative person. Why wouldn't they? Right. And that was a huge shift for them. And even to Jessica's point, like licensing, it is an opportunity, that I hope no one misses out on live music. But it's all the things, again, you know, with artists who want to create, you know, it's also important, I think, that COVID has really shown us to understand the elements of your business as a professional musician, professional artist, and really diversifying the different avenues for revenue for yourself. I think it really has challenged all artists to think differently, that you can't just do one thing anymore. You have to do multiple things, to diversify your portfolio as an artist. And that's what will end up succeeding you, because you have figured it out of how to remain relevant and thriving even in a pandemic.
I think a lot of folks who work at the venues, you know, the venues that I work a lot with, and all the venues in town are first and foremost, or a lot of them are music fans, and they're missing live music as much, you know, as everybody. You know, I think they'll be eager to get back. I mean, some folks may have moved on to other things. Some folks might be filling some time, but I think a lot of folks will come back, and you know, people are itching to get back to working shows just as much as they are going to shows.
Right. So we've got time for one more question from the audience. It looks like this one is for everyone. With the pause in touring, plus national spotlight and systemic racism, some in the music industry are taking this opportunity to try to push reorganizing around ethics and equity. Are you having those conversations within your own organizations? or with other organizations? And what does this conversation look like in Boston? I mean, we talked about how people are talking to each other that weren't talking to each other before. Is this part of the discussion?
I mean, I think for us, I always take that into consideration, being that I am a Black woman, and obviously I'm a manager as well, so I have to take that into consideration. But I never want Latrell to be the token Black artist. We're not here to fulfill a spot for you. We're not here to push any kind of views that you're trying to exhibit that you didn't before, without sincerity. It's just core to Latrell's brand, and I do my best to protect that. But you know, we always evaluate things. We always talk back to it. I always, you know, research companies that reach out to us, to see if there's an underlying theme, like what is the reason for this. But yeah, I always take those into consideration. I think sometimes you have to, because you just don't want to be put in that spot. Like we're not a placeholder. We're like human beings, and I think that should always be first and foremost.
Right.
I think we all you know, witnessed, you know, the social injustices that have happened throughout this pandemic. And while I like to think, you know, I do as much as I can, everybody can do better at being more inclusive and you know, being you know, cater to more audiences. So I think everybody can do better.
So it should just be, I mean, it shouldn't just be let's now have this conversation. This is forever our conversation at this point.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think just to acknowledge that it takes work and we have to work at it, and it's not, it shouldn't stop, even if it gets hard and uncomfortable. Because imagine what artists are going through, right? If what I've loved to see, throughout this pandemic is just how beautifully headstrong that artists have become in their voice, and agency, urgency, and transparency is what has been so great to see, that this pandemic has allowed artists to challenge institutions and even venues to really think about not just their social and creative capital, but their humility and the work that they have to offer. And humility was never a thing before, but I always say that if music and all art disappeared, what would this world look like? It looked very different, very, very different. So being able to understand someone's humility and humanity is really, really important as a musician, as an artist, as uh, a person who supports that experience. Equity should always, it should be a non-negotiable, in my humble opinion.
I agree. So this was the quickest hour I've ever experienced in my life. But we are there. I do have one more question to send us out tonight. And that question is, what will our current world look like to you when it is officially safe, when we're just going to live shows and everything is a-okay? You know, what can you tell me what you see when I say that? Like, what's a safe live event going to look like?
I actually think that when vaccines roll out, that you know, we can get back to a place where we're living lives in a way that we're accustomed to. And my hope is, I mean, I don't think we're not going to forget what's happened. And there are practices that I think that, you know, we will continue to observe, I hope. But you know, my hope is that the vaccines will work, and that people will have them and have access to them, because that's a whole problem in and of itself.
Yeah.
I think when live music comes back, it's going to be amazing, beautiful. We're going to all be together and dancing in the same room, and I'm looking forward to that day, very much so. And I know a lot of our peers are, a lot of fans are, a lot of artists are.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Catherine, any last thoughts from you?
I just think the way in which we have experienced space is going to look a whole lot different when we get through this. And that'll open people's minds about, it doesn't matter where you experience music as long as you experience together. So the traditional sense of space is completely shifted. And I hope audiences are ready, because we are.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah, we are.
So with that, we have hit time, and I'd really like thank you so much to you guys for sharing such thoughtful and informative insight into the real impact of that the pandemic has had on live music, and just reinforcing that we're all ready to get back in it.
Thanks
And
for having us. Thanks for the
yeah,
great conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you,
It was
Stacy.
thank you,
great
and thanks
meeting
to
you all,
everyone
and thank you.
joining us.